IRA trusts. So we've talked about this in the past, and for those of you that heard it, this is a good refresher. For those of you that haven't heard it, this is something that you should be considering for your clients. There are three main reasons we use IRA trusts: for income tax planning, to protect the bloodline, I'll get into all three of these, and for asset protection. And they work really well. And we're using them not only in states such as community property states, where you see a lot of joint trusts in community property states for tax planning purposes. We'll use an IRA trust to supplement the joint trust, because you cannot have an IRA payable to a joint trust. If you do, it automatically busts the IRA at death, and it causes it to be taxable immediately for income tax purposes. So there's income tax planning. We can use the IRA trust to get around. For income tax planning, bloodline protection is making sure that the assets go to who you want them to, or your heirs, your designated heirs. And then obviously asset protection is protecting it from the beneficiaries, the IRA beneficiaries' creditors. How do we protect it? IRA trusts are very unique in that regard. So, income tax planning, we have something called a conduit trust, which we use in about 80% of our basic estate plans. Your revocable trust has within it the ability to receive a payment from a retirement plan, an IRA or 401k or profit sharing plan, that will allow the payments to be stretched out over the life expectancy of the oldest trust beneficiary. And in a conduit trust, the oldest trust beneficiary is the oldest named primary beneficiary. So there are ways of doing this so that you can still get the benefits of stretching out the IRA but have it paid to the revocable trust. Why would we do that? Well, if we pay the asset, the income or the required minimum distribution directly to the beneficiary, they're going to spend it. Studies have been conducted, by the way. If you name a child as a beneficiary of an IRA, in 70% of the cases, they will spend it in 3 to 5 years. They will spend the IRA, even though they have the ability to stretch it out over their lifetime, because they're in control of it. Whereas if you name a revocable trust as the beneficiary of the IRA, the trustee can use the required minimum distribution of the income for the benefit of the beneficiary, paying their rent, paying for their food and their shelter, their college, whatever, and get credit for using it for that, and it qualifies as a conduit trust. So there's some controls you can implement by using a revocable trust as the recipient and having a conduit trust built in. But there's specific language that has to be in the trust in order for it to qualify as a conduit trust. And most of the trusts that I read from other lawyers who are not tax lawyers don't qualify as conduit trusts. They are accumulation trusts, which means that the IRA has to be taxed it's paid out within 5 years, and that's the maximum time period. That's not good income tax planning, but there are reasons to use that. But if you want to stretch it out over the lifetime of the oldest child, build in a conduit trust into your revocable trust. Another way of doing this is to have an IRA trust. What is an IRA trust? It's a revocable trust that's built solely to receive an IRA distribution. That's what it is. And so we'll create an IRA inheritance trust or IRA beneficiary trust, whatever you want to call it, that's revocable. You can change the beneficiaries, you can change who are the recipients, and if you have multiple trusts, then you can designate the beneficiary of each trust for purposes of designating their life expectancy and stretching it out over their lives. So multiple trusts allow you to do even more income tax planning because you can stretch it out over the life of each trust beneficiary as opposed to the oldest trust beneficiary. So IRA trusts we are using more and more, particularly because of the asset protection planning reasons.
So somebody would see a large amount of money in an IRA, that would separate that and essentially designate.
You don't have to separate the IRAs, you can keep it all together. You just have beneficiary designations to separate beneficiaries. So what a lot of people do is they'll say, well, I'll name my spouse as the primary beneficiary and I'll name my kids as the contingent beneficiaries. Well, that's not taking care of the asset necessarily for the bloodline. It's not preserving it for the bloodline, and it's not protecting it from predators. And I'll show you why in a minute. But if you use an IRA trust for the benefit of your child, then you can get the benefit of the income tax stretching it out over the life expectancy of the child, but also get the bloodline protection and the asset protection. That's good. Bloodline protection. If I name my spouse as the sole beneficiary of the IRA, which we do in most cases, in most of our client cases, particularly in less than high net worth, but medium and low net worth situations, the spouse can roll it over into an inherited IRA for themselves. And then they can stretch it out over their life expectancy, which is what most people want to do. They trust their spouse to do the right thing. What if the spouse doesn't do the right thing? Let me give you an example. Spouse and you and your spouse get along perfectly, and you see eye to eye on exactly what you want to do with the assets after you're gone. You die suddenly at the age of 58, and your spouse, who's 52, meets a guy who's 47, great looking, loves fast cars and boats, and loves to travel. She's the beneficiary of your IRA. And the spouse says, you know what? I don't have enough money, but we should take a world cruise. And we should buy a yacht to do that. Let's bust the IRA. She says, I really shouldn't do that. This is for the kids. And for me, for my lifetime. Oh, come on. We'll have so much fun. Let's do it. So she busts the IRA. Nothing you can do about it. Kids can't do anything about it. We haven't protected it for the bloodline. This happens all the time. How do you protect it? By leaving it to a trust. This is a hard discussion that you have with a client, but you can do that. You can protect it for the benefit of the spouse so that it can be used for their support. But after they're gone, whatever's left over is preserved for the benefit of the children from their marriage. Not children from the next marriage, not children from the other spouse's marriages, but for your children. That's bloodline protection. Some of my clients are really concerned about that. Some are not, because they know that the spouse will do the right thing. That's a matter of trust, as Billy Joel would say. If you give the spouse full control, there's no obligation to follow your wishes. Again, if you trust your spouse to do the right thing, then they will. That's okay. But children from a prior marriage that you may have had, or your client may have had, will not be protected if they decide to disinherit them. What if a child is a beneficiary of the IRA? They have the right to inherit this asset. Technically, it's protected in a divorce, but if they've been living on the IRA or pulling assets out, that gives the spouse an opening to claim ownership of that IRA. So, again, protecting it for the benefit of the child, but without necessarily giving them complete access, as 70% of all children will bust the IRA, take the money out, and spend it.